Hello, welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in, sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome back. If you have, my intention is unity and oneness and the highest levels of love light. This is going to be a bit of an energetic update, a week in review, I'm going to call it. So we've made it through the first week of July. If I have time, I'm going to go into a little channeled flow with the guidance team about some of the energies. I might do that in a second video. I wanted to talk about the week in review because what a powerful week. Anybody else feeling that? So we're through the first week of July. I mean, it's been powerful ongoing since, I don't know, 2012. But I feel as if the fire has been turned up. I don't know if anybody else is feeling that. And part of the reason I started this channel 5 years ago or whenever I started it was because I was going through some experiences in my own life, and I found that other people were going through it too. The way in which I describe my experiences is different than how other people describe their experiences. And it's really important for us to be able to find our tribe, to find people that we can relate to find people who will listen and feel into what we're feeling into, or that we can listen to and absorb in a certain way that allows us to essentially expand and enhance our experience. And so a lot of the energies that I was feeling this week were very strong. So we've got a lot of solar activity ongoing, right? And it's summertime, so of course it's going to be fiery, depending on what part of the world you live in, of course. But whether or not you're in a summer heat environment, there's a lot of internal heat going on for a lot of us. I just did a video on clairvoyance. It wasn't really about clairvoyance. It was more about what that means. So I encourage you to go back and watch that if you feel called to. That was my previous video. And there's a lot of internal combustion going on, a lot of fiery feelings. Whereas last month, to me, felt softer. It felt like I was really in a state of flow. I felt like something had lifted me and was pushing me in the right direction. And if I wasn't in too much resistance, it was a really nice flow. Whereas this week, all of a sudden, something shifted and there's all this fire coming up. There's not as much resistance as much as there is fear. That's kind of a theme I've been noticing in my reality as well as others, what we're all working with right now. Those fears can be anything. What are you afraid of? And if you don't know what you're afraid of, from my perspective, it's going to come up for you potentially this month. And you might say, oh, didn't realize I was afraid of that. Didn't realize I had not processed this or integrated this. Thank you for showing me, universe. And then as those things come up, it can be really challenging to stay in balance and not to get sucked into that power of fear, because fear is a very powerful chemical response and it's survival, right? We go into that and all of a sudden our adrenaline goes up, our cortisol goes up. We begin to overthink, overanalyze. We might take action that doesn't necessarily reflect a balanced state. And by the way, this video isn't going to just be about fear. It's about a lot of other things as well. That's just the tip of the iceberg. There's other things that have come up in addition to that. But along that note, I'm going to be talking about scales in a minute. Along that note, there is this essence for some people to run away. So when we're in a place of fear, it can actually be we don't want to get up in the morning. We feel tired. We feel depressed. So it can be the opposite of feeling anxious and on edge. We can actually respond to fear. So that's the other thing that's coming up is how are we responding to this fear? And it can be different at different times. It can be different at different times based on the type of fear that we're experiencing or the reason for the fear that we're experiencing. So we're really being called to recognize either that happening within ourselves this month of July, or recognizing that it might be happening in someone else that is around us. It could be happening in our friends or family because this might be coming up for them. I see this as fire, almost as if a fire is moving through our bodies, our emotional body, our mental body, our physical body, and so on and so forth. We are like nesting dolls, right? From my perspective. And it's kind of highlighting or lighting up whatever might be in there that doesn't fit, or that we need to release, that we need to, I'm seeing the rising phoenix, right? Or phoenix rising, the bird that's on fire. And alchemy, right? So we're burning through this, and what does that do? It transmutes it into something different, ashes to ashes, dust to us, and dust to dust, and we are born again, right? So as we are born again, over and over again, in this, let's say for this particular video, the month of July, we may have many different times that come up for us in these moments. It's a purge almost, a different kind of purge. And I'm just sharing from my perspective what I'm seeing. So sometimes that fear can be other people not understanding us. It can be the fear of not being supported. It can be the fear of doing something wrong and getting in trouble for it. It could be a fear of a natural disaster, a fear of losing a loved one, a pet, anything. So we're being shown our fears, or they're being reflected back to us because the light is so bright from one perspective that you can't help but see it. And it's almost, from my perspective, difficult to ignore. It's almost like in the past, we could have swept it under a rug. We could have ignored it. But now it's here. So we're having to deal with it. But one of the messages that's been coming through, not just about fear, but in general, is to scale back. Whereas the previous couple of months, I felt it was a push. Do it now, do it now, do it now. Spider has been coming up. And spider is so representative of many different meanings. Spider is the weaver of reality, according to the indigenous peoples in many cultures. And spider is a representative of, hold on. So I'm a little frozen here. Let me close out a couple of windows, see if that helps. I had tried to record something earlier and I thought, is Mercury in retrograde? I don't think it is, but with all this increased solar activity, we do have some issues with the internet and technology sometimes, just from what I've read about. So it doesn't surprise me that maybe there's something going on today. I'm not really sure. Okay, but having said that, spider has been coming up in my reality everywhere I go. And it was kind of an ongoing joke. I just was with some friends recently, and it's everywhere I went, a spider was either on me, a spider was hanging from the ceiling, a spider was in the bathroom, and you get to the point where you're just like, okay, I'm listening. And that's kind of what the message is. My last video was clairvoyance, and I spoke about this briefly. But our clairvoyance, being able to see clearly, is coming online. Can we see clearly through the fears that are coming up? Oh, and I'm being called to say also, we might be seeing the fears in the collective also. That's really important, especially if we're tuning into the collective, if we're watching the news, if we're having conversations with groups, if we're involved in I see what's going on. I've got to read this spider because there's so many ads that are coming up, it's slowing down my computer. So briefly though, if we are, let's say, involved in a community and we're having political discussions, we're going to be in that reality that's been woven. Politics and all of that has been woven already. We're just part of it as a collective. So we're going to feel that, when something jumps on the web, everything vibrates. So we're going to feel the ripple of what has already been created, or the echo or the reverberation, the wave that has already been. And it's just hitting us now, or we're hearing it now. We're seeing it now, but it came from way back long ago, and we're just hearing that echo. Similarly, so this has been a synchronicity with myself and my dear sisters and friends. We're hearing and feeling that reverberation. And in a lot of cases, it's fear that's reverberating. And we're like, where did that come from? I didn't even realize that was there. Why am I feeling so fearful or unsure right now? Oh, well, I'm feeling what's being triggered within me because of these discussions I'm having about our future, because of things and my own fear of survival, my own fears that are associated with my childhood, whatever it might be. Let me just share spider briefly, and then I can close this out. Oh, they teased me. All right, let me pause. All right. Anyways, spider is creativity. It's in the shape of an 8, okay? And what are we creating? And recognizing that we are part of this creation. We are the spider. We are the web, right? We are that. And what are we pulling into our webs? Where are we building our webs, right? How are we building our webs? Are they temporary? Are they permanent? Who are we creating with? So these are all questions we're really being called to ask ourselves right now. And we're being called to scale back within, for us to then feel into the clairvoyance that is coming online. This is the message of July. So, and it can be clairaudient, clairvoyant, but clairvoyance was the main theme that I was seeing. So all this stuff is being brought up for us to see visually, but it may not be something necessarily that we see with our eyes. So I brought up the animal cards. You use that with your eyes, and then your environment gives you that reflection back, depending on what questions you're asking your environment and what you're open to understanding. However, we really are being called to go within and use our internal compass, our internal medicine, so that we can feel into the sound behind the sound, is what I call it. The echo and the reverberation that was versus the depth finder, the depth sounder. I'm hearing ping, ping, the radar, that internal compass that allows us to see what is no longer and separate or extract the nutrients from it that are now available to us again. And this has to do with time. It has to do with something that we are in alignment with astrologically. It has something to do with what we've experienced maybe at this cycle in another lifetime, in a future lifetime, in this lifetime, that is lining up with this particular energy in the month of July. So this creative ability that we might have been feeling in the last couple months is still available to us. But we're being called to also recognize the distortions that we may not have really truly let go of. And that's kind of where we're at. Now, I want to hone in, maybe just do a video on spider if I have time some point this weekend, because for me, spider represents the infinity. It represents the lines out. The legs and the shape of the spider is a very significant energetic shape or structure that activates my own awareness of reality, right? A symbol, a hieroglyph, if you wish to call it. Also, it has to do with piezoelectricity. If you look up piezoelectricity, it looks like a spider. So that's a reminder that we are the spiders. We are electrical beings. We are sending out that electricity. We are sending out those waves in the ethers, through the ethers. And that is what is creating, our thoughts create. They have power through the lines, and we are weaving that web, whether we are weaving beautiful webs that have beautiful geometries, or we're weaving some chaotic tunnel that we can only get in and out of, right? What and how do we want that to look? How would we like that to look? So, yeah, So I hope these are the synchronicities that have been coming up energetically for me. I'm being called to dive into that because earlier I said scale back. So what is a scale? Well, according to Wikipedia, and you can look it up, you might be a musician and you already know, but I'm going to share. In music theory, a scale, so scale also represents the scales, right, on measurements, heavy and light as a feather. Also, it represents not only weight, but measurement, right? You think about when you scale a photograph, but it also represents music. And that was what I was kind of tuning into, so to speak. In music theory, a scale is any consecutive series of notes that form a progression between one note and its octave. An octave is a series of 8, there's the spider again, notes occupying, and how many legs does a spider have? Occupying the interval between 2 notes, one having twice the frequency of vibration of the other. This to me is so symbolic on so many levels or layers. So let's see if I can break it down just a little bit in reference to the synchronicities or what we might be feeling. So 8 infinite. Let's take those series of 8 notes. We are occupying, right? So the scale back, occupying the interval, right? The space in between 2 notes, one having twice the frequency of vibration of the other. So it's doubling it. Now, I look at this as we are, what did I say? I don't know if I said this in this video because I accidentally deleted my other video. But what I had said was we are going bigger, stronger, faster. Okay, so we're going bigger, stronger, faster. So everything in our reality might feel bigger, stronger, faster, more intense. We're creating faster. Everything feels stronger. Our clairvoyance might be coming online. So we're seeing things with more clarity, but we're also feeling things with more feeling. So if we have a lot of emotion, and we'll come back to fear, yet we're creating something, we can clearly feel that fear, that anxiety, that sadness, that anger, whatever it might be, that the internal fire and light is pulling up. So being aware that my guides are saying scale back, get in the in-between space, because that doubled up that's happening from 1 to 2, if we want to call it that, or I don't know if that's a double, 1 plus 1 is 2, theoretically. So if we can be in that in-between space, the center of the infinity, which is coherence, it allows us to be in a greater state of balance, which can be very challenging right now, especially with the collective interface that we're interfacing with, right? In that in-between space, right? In that interval. And by the way, that interval has to do with time. So that's kind of the message, is we're in between that space and we're bridging those together, and we're kind of learning how to move into this bigger, better, faster. And we're just not quite there yet at certain times. Some of us are already there. We're like, I got this. And those of you who've got this can really help others who don't. Just by holding out a helping hand. Hey, I notice you don't have to say, I notice you're struggling a little bit, but can I help you? There's, and some people don't know how to ask for help. Some people don't want help. That's us. We have to use our discernment, our clairvoyance, our discernment to then recognize maybe that person doesn't want my help right now, but they might want it tomorrow. And just being there, but more importantly, just holding space, meaning when we walk into a room, sending out that signal of coherence, if we can hold that space for as often and as long as we can, it actually shifts. And you can look this up on heartmath.org, I think, or .com. But they've done many studies on our field of coherence, balance, peace, joy, compassion, bliss, goes from, let's say, pulling it in 3 feet to 15 feet, probably even bigger than that. That means 15 feet around us, we are affecting our web. It is a ripple effect, right? We are sending out that musical note that has a quality to it that can be palpably felt, seen, heard at the quantum scale. All right, so that's kind of our keynote for this energetic of July. All right, where else was I going with that? I was also called to, so I would encourage you, I'll do another video on this and go in a little deeper because I'd like to go into a little flow about this. The other thing is when you scale back, it doesn't mean stop doing what you're doing. The guides are just saying go within and reflect. See what's being reflected back to you. Because if you're creating and you're just on a roll, but simultaneously you're in a great place of afraid, I'm going to create even though I'm afraid, you should still keep creating. But you may want to not take action until you've processed the emotions surrounding it. And I'm being called to go into this a little deeper. We want to take action from our place of centeredness, feeling centered and feeling like, okay, I know I have this fear program running in the back of my mind right now. I'm going to turn this in. I'm going to let it go for now and trust. If we don't feel that we can, then that gives us more of an opportunity to tune back in and recognize where we are. What interval are we in? What part of the note are we in? Are we in balance? Maybe it means we don't necessarily sign a contract with someone unless we have to, but we wait a moment, take our time to get our clarity, feel into the decision, and then move forward. Also, I'm being called to really focus on scale, and it originates from the ladder. So going up. So we're in this process of going up this ladder, and it's scary, right? To go up a really tall ladder. But that's why the guides were telling me earlier, 1 foot in front of the other. Because a lot of us are too busy looking at the top, like I gotta get there, no matter what. And then we miss a rung and we slide back down because we were too caught up in the moment of being afraid or being overly confident or whatever it might be, and we missed a step. So that's kind of another theme of the month of July. Like, what steps have we maybe missed that have made it harder for us to move up the ladder? And I don't mean like the ladder of the corporate world. I'm talking like ascension ladder. I'm hearing Jacob's ladder. I don't even know what that is. I remember it slightly, but we're being called to recognize that this is, and I'm seeing a ladder more instead of vertical. I'm seeing it more of like the bridge, a ladder, a bridge from one octave to another. So in order to balance that out, we're really being called to recognize the patterns. So therefore, any scale is distinguished by its step pattern or how its intervals interact with each other. So this brings me back to time. Oh my goodness, I have to do a whole video on this. I'm seeing these 8s, right? And I'm seeing them kind of doing this. And as they merge, contract and expand from, it looks like it's 2, right? If it's an 8, 1, and 2 that came from the 1, they're still connected though. They haven't separated, but they're expanding and contracting. And for me, this vision has to do with time. So as we get closer and closer together, we're feeling this oneness, and then we get more separate and we're like, whoa, so far away from what I thought I wanted, but we're in the same loop. But then we can move into a new loop because we're in this interval in which we're creating the next pattern. And this is where the messages that have been coming through are to recognize the patterns that we've already created, recognize the patterns that have already been created, recognize what we're afraid of, and don't recreate that. Okay, not again. I'm aware. Intervals, okay, is a difference in the pitch between 2 sounds. And as I say that, I'm using all of my awareness. I'm seeing a baseball. I'm seeing a pitcher throw the baseball. Is it a fastball, right? Are they going to walk the hitter? Anyways, so recognizing the difference between these two sounds, the past and the future, the lower frequency, the higher frequency, the lower dimension, the higher dimension, where we are, where we want to go, right? I'm getting goosebumps on this. An interval may be described as horizontal, linear, or melodic if it refers to two successively sounding tones, such as two adjacent pitches right next to each other in a melody, and vertical or harmonic if it pertains to simultaneously sounding tones. So from my perspective, it's this all happening simultaneously. We're hearing this echo or this pattern or this reverberation, but it's happening now, the infinity. There is no separation. There's only the idea that we're separated, right? So recognizing that is very important. This is just touching me. It's pulling me back. It's making me look back, right, to what once was. And we're seeing it reflected back to us through politics, through the television, through all of it, through family dynamics, through something that came up that we thought that is making us feel insecure. And we think, why am I feeling insecure about this? I shouldn't be feeling insecure. It's a reverberation from something that we felt insecure about that is similar or very, very alike what we're going through now. And this again has to do with rebirth, time cycles, rising of the phoenix, that energy coming up. And it's kind of getting rid of all the debris that has accumulated in our field. All right, I hope that was somewhat clear. Okay. I'm also being called to talk briefly, and again, I will be doing more videos on the body and certain diets and diseases that are happening in the body. But for those who have been diagnosed with some type of disorder, I'm just going to touch on this briefly because I've done certain videos on it already, and I might do a whole series and then organize them so we can go through some of the diseases not being at ease in the body based on what my guides have shared with me and what I've also experienced personally. But for those of us who have been told this is how things are, and the fears that come up around that, that's also something that might be heightened this month right now. And so it's really important for those of us who are experiencing that ourselves or going through it because of loved ones or going through it because of what we're seeing collectively. All the numbers on this are rising. All the numbers on that are rising. This also could have to do with climate activity and anyway, physical well-being. We'll get back to that. Recognizing also my poor English professor. We are being called to recognize that we are still creating our future. So maybe looking at what hasn't worked for us and do something completely different. In that case, I was saying that it might be good to scale back. That doesn't mean don't take action. Fire is an action. What it does mean though is to take action, go within and ask ourselves, really hone in on what our body needs. Do our research. Look at, balance things out. What would be a balanced process here that would help me find equanimity, that would help me find this ability to balance on this ladder, so to speak. And that requires us to put one foot in front of the other and look at what's coming into our awareness through synchronicity. Because it might be that we have a conversation with someone who just went through what we're going through. And they say, oh, I have a doctor. I tried this. Have you ever thought of this? And when we're weaving ourselves into a tunnel and we're not looking at that, but we want answers, but we're too afraid and we might be in shutdown mode. If we could just scale back and hold our balance as much as possible, doesn't mean we're going to be in sunshine and rainbows if we're sick, but it does mean we can read. It does mean we can listen to positive things. It does mean we can do breath work, meditation, water, light therapy, etc., etc. So finding different ways to stimulate our senses to help us bridge that gap, so to speak. Cross the ladder. I'm also being called to talk about those physical symptoms that could be coming up for the month of July. And there may be a lot of people who are feeling stomach issues. I'm being shown right now the solar plexus region, right? And let's talk about that, because what's interesting to me is the solar plexus, I always thought of it as just being this area, right? I thought, okay, this is the solar plexus region. But what is the solar plexus? Well, the solar plexus, looking on online here, the definition is a nerve center in the abdomen that controls the abdominal organs and regulates the body's stress response. So if we're in a place of all this accumulated stuff, anxiety, fear, depression, uncertainty, all those things are focused around fear. Our solar plexus region might start to clam up, might start to go into protective mode, might start to become agitated. Also, if we've got a lot of fire coming up through this, that can create, so I might have to do a video just on that if I find time. So I'm really being called to highlight that. So if we have gastrointestinal issues, we may have more cramping, we may have more, what does the solar plexus region? So it comes from the sun's rays. Think about the heightened fire that we're getting from the sun right now. That sun, as above, so below, as within, so without. So we are a microcosm to the cosm. We are the micro to the macro. We are, let's say our body is a representation of the galactic body. So the solar plexus, if we want to call it that, think about what that's doing right now. And if you're not sure what's that, if you haven't watched these videos before, look up solar activity. What's been happening? CMEs, right? Increased heat, fire, all of that. So it's located behind the aorta. So think about the heart. We might be feeling more heart palpitations. So recognizing the solar activity isn't just the stomach. So this isn't just about the stomach. This is about what wraps around. It's the whole, the trunk of the tree, right? So these nerves are connected to everything. And so it contains the ganglia that send and receive signals from the brain. And the name comes from the sun's rays, which resembles the branches that extend from clusters of nerves. And it's near the diaphragm behind the aorta. And it's responsible for the liver, pancreas, gallbladder, and mediating the body's stress response. So whatever we can do right now to support our solar plexus, which is our body, essentially. We've heard the term heart brain. We've heard the term there's a brain in our gut. It's starting to really show up now. And for those, I talked about our extrasensory abilities coming online. So clairvoyance, for example. If our stomach is a mess, when you know something's wrong, you have a gut feeling. If we're in a constant place of a state of fight or flight, we don't know. We're not able to really discern, which was one of the other themes, by the way, that was coming up for the month of July. We're not able to truly discern what's really going on with our bodies, with our visions, with what we should or shouldn't do with our lives. So it's important to mediate your own stress response by breath work. Any type of stimulation of the vagal nerve stimulation could be good. Relaxation, essentially. Relax. That might be a challenging thing for us to do this month if we're not used to it, or we haven't dealt with some things that are coming up. So whatever we need to do to go above, I'm hearing go above and beyond, because we're going to thank us later. And it's interesting because if you look up what they say online, according to the chakra system, which is an energy center in the body, according to, what is this? Well, a lot of information. What is the center? Willpower, right? Our will. But it's associated with tyranny. It's associated with powerlessness. So where in our lives do we feel like we don't have power? Where do we feel like we're powerless? So that can bring up fear, the lack of power. So we might be seeing other people go above and beyond in not necessarily the most balanced of ways. And they may decide to become overexpress, tyrannical, overpowering, dominating, making up for the weakness in the gut, in the solar plexus. So this is something to keep in mind, and recognizing that within others, being patient. Part of spider, the medicine of spider medicine, is patience, patiently weaving and waiting in the sense of what lands in its web. That doesn't mean we don't take action through meditation, through journaling, through working towards our goals, but not taking action from a place of a power grab. Does that make sense? I'm sure it does, but so not everything I say makes sense, but I think that was pretty clear. Okay, so I think I'm going to end on this note as the general July overview and also this week in review. I'm going to do another video on this because there's so much jam-packed into this. I mean, just looking at the solar plexus, there's so much packed into this. I am being called to really focus on that just for a second. We might have to do, it might behoove us to do a liver cleanse, to do a gallbladder cleanse, to maybe go get some acupuncture and give our bodies a better chance to kind of cool. I'm hearing cool the limbic system. I don't even know if the limbic system gets heated, but lots of heat. So whatever we can do to cool it, water, breathing, grounding, because that spider is coming back to electromagnetism. Yeah, I'm also seeing different timelines in my vision right now, but I'll go into that later. Okay, I'm gonna end on that note. I guess I'm gonna do a little channeling in the next video. So in the meantime, I hope someone found this helpful, and yeah, so enjoy the month of July as much as possible, coming back to compassion, coming back to joy, doing things to open the solar plexus, opening the heart, recognizing that we do have messages coming in. We just have to balance it out with that need to control and feeling out of control and power. Recognizing that there are activations happening. I'm going to end on that note, on a positive note. The sun is helping us. The earth is helping us. We just have to open to allow those energies to move through us. And if we have blockages still, or overpowering with our thinking, we're shutting down our system to fully function at its highest potential. We're being called to recognize our thought patterns, to reach out and assist our brothers and sisters, but to get on our own directional course of balance first. So we don't overreact, we don't underreact. We just have to work on utilizing our own bridge, strengthening our own web before we are jumping onto somebody else's, before we are moving into the next octave. And the other messages coming through is we are already creating the next octave. We are already there. But because of the reverberation, the echo from the past that is still affecting us, it's having that 1 foot in one world and 1 foot in the other. It feels heightened right now, and it feels stronger right now. And that's going to bring up that echo of the past fears, thoughts, thought patterns, etc., etc. So just being aware of that can empower us more, to feel more into our power, to help us sustain our energetic exchange with our bodies, our environment, our foods, our friends, our families, the entirety. I'm hearing the whole enchilada of that which we are part of. And just breathe. And there are many beautiful things. I think towards the end of the month, as we progress through this, things will be shifting dynamically. for a lot of people. So that's exciting. I'm hearing dynamically, like we'll have to play with that in a future video. So this is just a very powerful time right now for us to truly see what we need to see. In love and light, guys. Namaste.